Today we are going to talk about the Dresden plates. Those of you that are in the Blue Box Club have received this template. It's a Creative Grids template and it's called the Non-Slip 18-Degree Dresden Plate Ruler. And we're going to talk about the multifacets of the ruler. And the Dresden, just so you know, is I've done a little research trying to come up with all these different ideas and ways we can use this template. So for the next few Mondays at least, I am going to do a live on this template and different ways that you can utilize it. Of course, starting with the basics of how the template is supposed to be used, which is a very old quilting pattern. The Dresden plate first initiated in the late 1800s, and there's a little conflict going on based on my research on where the design literally came from. There is a town called Dresden in Germany, and they were famous for porcelain production, and they had these plates with these scalloped edges. So some people think that it came from that, colorful floral plates, and some people say no, it was the painter's stamp on the back of it, the designer's stamp on the back of it, that it looked like this Dresden plate. So there's a little confusion on which one it might be, but it's really came popular probably in the 1920s. And stayed popular till about 1950. The first quilt block pattern which was developed was in the 1930s, which goes along with the colorful blocks that were made back then, because if you see antique quilts with the Dresden plate, you'll see that they're made with some traditional floral fabrics or feed sack. A lot of times you'll see them in feed sack, and if you look at our reproduction designers today, a lot of times they are incorporating that Dresden plate. So like Lori Holt and others that do those 30s reproductions or that 30s look in their fabrics. Great opportunity to do the Dresden plate. So what we're going to focus on today is this little guy right here. Now, knowing that it is a wedge ruler, this is an 18-degree ruler, and if you think about the plate, it's 360-degree circle. This is a quarter of the circle. You would just continue around and add your blades. There's a 180. Right? And then you continue on. So I get asked a lot when people come in and they're like, I found this pattern and I need a wedge ruler. And the question always is, what size ruler do you need? And they don't realize that there's different degrees. So this is an 18-degree ruler. So how you figure out how many blades you need or what size ruler you need is based on the number of blades. So if you're looking at a 360-degree circle, you need, on an 18-inch ruler, or 18-degree ruler, you need 20 blades. Take your 360, divide it by the number of blades, that's the size ruler you need. Or 360 divided by the degrees, that's how many blades you need. So if you are looking at a block that you're trying to duplicate, count the blades. It's 360. That's the size wedge you need. Okay? Our focus is on the 18-degree ruler. And I'll show this again because it's clear, so it's probably hard to see. But this Creative Grids ruler is the Dresden ruler, and it comes with a 3-inch finished circle. Okay, the ruler itself is 9 inches. This is something I started probably 12 years ago, and you'll probably see this again. I'll talk about it. It is I call it my 15 degrees of craziness. It is a 15-degree ruler, and it's a 24-inch ruler, or 22 and a half or something like that, but it's a big ruler, and I'll talk about this a little bit because you can incorporate these ideas into this ruler, okay? Those of you that have received this ruler. I also have this little block, and you can see my little Dresden here with the great big circle. The Dresden plate back in the 30s, 50s, 20s had a lot of different names, okay? It wasn't just the Dresden plate. Some people called it the sunflower block. Some people called it there's the dahlia block. There's a lot of different names for it and a lot of different ways that you can use this template. And I'm going to challenge myself in your Blue Box Challenge to give you as many ideas as I can to use this template. If you have a 3mm, 5mm, 7mm, 9mm, the higher the number, the more needle positions you have. And for this block, you want a scant 1/4 inch. And I did it with a scant 1/4 inch, and it came out perfect. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about with that. But your machine will give you the stitch length and the stitch width. So I'm going to put it on my 1/4 inch, and here is my stitch width. So if you're doing a zigzag, it gives you the stitch width. Okay, and I'm just going to increase that by 1 needle position. So you might test this because, again, 1 needle position on a 9mm machine is very scant. 1 position on a 3mm machine is going to be larger. So you might need to play with that a little bit to understand where you need your needle to be to get you the best scant 1/4 inch. Okay? So this is a Creative Grids ruler, and it's CGR 18CF. It's 18 degrees. It's 9-inch ruler, and it's separated in segments. Okay, and there are 2 sets of numbers on it. One of them is 1 to 9. That is the non-circled side. So if I'm measuring from the wide end, it's going this way. And they are in 1/4 inch increments, but the number is every half. The circled one is from the skinny side up. So if I'm measuring from here, then I look at the circle and it's 1, 2, 3. Okay? As with all Creative Grids rulers, they have that non-slip, and they have it right down the center. So you'll see these little dots. I don't know if you can see them, but there's a little dot every inch that allows you to press down and make sure it doesn't shift too much on your fabric. In addition, they give you the center circle. Okay, and it's a 3-inch finish, so this is 3.5-inch diameter circle. Okay, and that's what we use for the center of the quilt. Now, I suggest a couple tools that you will need. One is a fresh blade. Make sure you have a fresh blade in your rotary cutter. Now, in the perfect world, I would also have a 28 or an 18 blade. And this is a 45, but I would also have at least a 28. Those of you that have seen some of my tutorials in the past, when you are working with specialty, small, curvy type templates, a smaller blade works better. Okay, I left mine in Kansas City when I was there, so I didn't have one, and I can tell you that it would have been really nice if I had. So that is a plus there. The other thing I suggest is a Hera tool. Most of you have this tool. It's got a pointed end. It also has a flat end usually that you can press seams open or do turning and curve out the seams, and you'll see me use that. This is an embroidery tool, and it's the Expert press and turn quilt or tool for machine embroidery. I have fallen in love with this. It's got a ball point on each end. This is a smaller end. Can act like a stiletto. It can turn, and because it's not pointed, you know, so many times we use our scissors or something like that, and you'll see what I'm talking about, and you poke right through it. So with the larger ball point, it just makes it so much nicer. But I will be using this tool in combination, but this is the tool that most of you have, is the Hera tool. Okay, so let's get going. So those of you that have maybe some layer cakes that you're going to break down, oh, I should show you this first. Your tool comes with instructions, but you know, so many of us, we like to see it in action, so here we are. But what's nice on this tool is it talks to you about your finished block size. And of course, you don't want your plate to go on a 12-inch block to go all the way 12 inches. So it's telling you, here's my finished block size, here's what size my finished plate will be, and then what size segment do I need. So and every single one of these, you will need 20 blades because it's an 18-degree ruler. So think about that. If you're using multiple fabrics, 2 fabrics, you can layer them and cut them together. Now, if you have some leftover charms or leftover 10-inch squares, you can get about 3 of these off of a 10-inch square, okay? Or a 5-inch. If you're doing 5-inch, you're going to measure it from here to here, and your circle will go over it like that. Here's the 5 mark, so it'll go over like that. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is cut your strip to width. For simplicity's sake, I cut my strip at 9 inches. But if you're doing a 5-inch blade, because let's see, a 12-inch block, it suggests a 4-inch measurement. So if that were the case, I would have cut my strip 4 inches. I would put the wide blade on top, and of course mine's 9, so I'm at 4.5. But I would line up my measurements, get all the way over here, and I would cut. Now, what's nice about this template, I am right-handed, okay, which means I'm going to cut on the left side. So, truth be told, I should have started on this end, make my first cut right there. Okay, love my little rotating mat. I do not have to disturb the fabric, okay, and I can cut my next one. So my straight of grain is going this way on my wedge, but these are on the bias. So if I were to put it on this way, then one side would be bias and one side would be on the straight of grain. So I don't think that would work as well. So here we have my first wedge. And then you just turn it over and you keep going. You put your straight end out, line up the edge, line it up here and here, and you just keep going until you run out of your strip. And with each one, you will have 2 wedges, okay? So I layered my fabrics, and I have 2 wedges. The first thing you're going to do is take this wedge, one of your wedges, and you're just going to finger press it all the way down. Okay, and you don't have to finger press it all the way down, but make sure that this side, but be very careful because again, these raw edges are on the bias and you don't want to stretch them and pull them out of, you know, get them all wonky. Okay, so that's the first thing you do. Then the next thing you do, while that is in the folded side, you're going to start on the folded edge and do your scant 1/4 inch all the way across. So now when you do that, you have this guy, and I maybe should have used a different color thread, but there is a 1/4 inch scant going all the way across, starting on the folded edge. I'm going to take my scissors and just cut off that folded edge right above the stitching line. Be careful not to cut your stitching line. Okay? So now I can open this up. I'm going to center it on my fold, and I'm just going to finger press this open. Okay, I'm going to take my seam and I'm going to get it nice and flat. Now, if you don't have nails, okay, I have nails, so I was able to do that. But this is where your Hera can come into play. You can just get it nice and flat. Okay, once you get it nice and flat, you'll see, if I can do this right, you'll see that the edges there are in the same angle as your pointed Dresden. So when I turn this, and I use my little Hera tool to get the point out, okay, I turn it over, I line up the seam with my fold, okay, and then you press it, okay? You could take it to the iron and press it. I would suggest that. Get it nice and flat, and then you have your first Dresden blade, okay? And you can see the seam lines up with the fold. So now I do that with my floral one, and I do it with my green one. And then I take my floral and my green one, and I suggest doing these in pairs with one extra, and I'll explain that here in a second. So now when I do this, you'll see the point of your blade right here, okay? I'm lining those up, and I'm really lining up the edge all the way down the edge, and you can pin it, okay? Get it nice and straight. Again, using that 1/4 inch. However, we're going to start our sewing right about here, okay? So I put the needle down there, I take a stitch forward, and I back stitch off to the edge, and then I come forward. Okay, so in most quilting, as you know, we just sew down, right? That leaves this edge right here vulnerable to split and come apart. Well, if we start here and do our back stitch and come back down, then our blade will not fall apart. It will be secure right there, okay? So start 1/4 inch down about, take a stitch forward, go all the way down, go all the way back, and then all the way down to the end. Okay, if you're worried about this end, we usually cover this end, so I'm not as worried. I did not back stitch there. You can see all my loose threads, but on this end, it made it nice and clean. And look how good that met. Okay, so the next thing I did, you have choices. You can fold them all to one side, which I would do if I were meeting them in the center like Lois did. I would fold them all to one side, so that would make that centerpiece flat. But since we're covering ours with the circle, I opened up all the seams. Now that I have a 1/4 of a block, I want to see how it's laying. I'm going to use the lines on my board and see if it squares up. So it should sit nicely in that corner. That's pretty good. I'm just a little bit off. I'm happy with that. And I can easily, if I can pull it like that just a little bit to get it straight, then setting it with an iron, I'm sure it will be a perfect 1/4 inch. So guys, as I mentioned, I did this a long time ago before I really understood how Dresdens work. And see how this is? See how it's puckery there? So I'm going to have to tear some of this out because I didn't do that. I didn't take a quarter and make sure that it was laying flat and that it was to size. So had I done that, I would have known I did something wrong in that quarter of a blade. So this just saves you from when your blade is, or when your Dresden is 100% complete. If you measure each one, then you only have to deal with these 5 blades. So hopefully that makes sense. So next we have our circle template. Let's do this. Let's mark our circle. Okay. And I just need my circles, so that's all I need. And I'm layering it with, here's my circle, and I'm layering it. This is how I do it. They suggest that you come in a 1/4 inch and make a 3-inch circle with freezer paper. And then you can base it down, do hand turn if you are a hand turn person. I am not. I like to do things by machine. So I used a fusible stabilizer and I put the 2 together and I stitched them down a 1/4 inch in. And if you look at my template, it is pretty dang close. The dotted line is on my stitching line. So I'm going to separate these and cut a little hole in it, not through my fabric. Okay, so just in there. I'm going to also go around my circle. Okay. About a 1/4 inch out. If you have pinking shears, that would make this so much faster. You could use pinking shears, go all the way around it. Just make sure you don't cut through the thread and go all the way around. And once I do that, I can turn it inside out. Okay, you can use your Hera or your perfect turn if that's what you have. Okay. Okay, and once you smooth it all out and get all that done, I try to get it on top of the seam of the fabric instead of the stabilizer. Try to get the point, and that will help it turn a little better, and you can see that looks pretty good. And then that way, if it's fusible, when I'm done with my Dresden, I can fuse it right down. Okay? So guys, I think I have taken up enough of your morning, but I hope you got something out of this tutorial. Next week, we will be talking about this block and maybe a little bit more because you already know how to do the points, but we'll focus on the circles, and I will have a couple other ideas for you to use that circle template. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me, Coffee with Amy. I see you next Monday at 9 a.m. Talk to you then. Bye-bye now.